Hey there, seekers of spiritual, tangible results.
Welcome to the no-nonsense zone, where common sense meets the spiritual. I'm Jason Parks.
I'm Emma Romano, your unapologetically real spiritual guides.
We don't sugarcoat, we don't dance around the woo-woo, we just deliver the raw, kick-ass truth.
Join us each episode as we dive deep into the mystical, cut through the bullshit, and show you how to manifest the tangible results you've been craving for.
No fluff, no filters, just two mentors on a mission to elevate your mind, body and soul.
Get ready to transform your life like never before. This is Soul Aligned Results, where spirituality meets the real world. Welcome, everybody. This is Soul Aligned Results, a podcast. I'm giggling because we just did a blooper. we had to stop and come back. Okay, guys, today's going to be a great one. First, I'm here. This is the amazing Jason Parks. Jason, do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, yeah, I'm Jason Parks. I'm an energetic therapy specialist and applied spirituality mentor.
Okay, I'm going to come clean. I'm giggling because he goes, I'm Jason Parks, and I have no idea why I'm here. Hi, guys. I'm Emma Romano, trauma and relationship expert. And I want to have a chat about a conversation I had with Jason not long ago, and it dropped me on my butt. And I really feel everybody needs to know this conversation. So Jason had this epiphany, right? That, you know how we'll go, oh, I sabotage myself in this, and, you know, I'll do it when I'm more motivated and things like that. And Jason said to me, there's no such thing as sabotage. I'm like, dude, I'm 54. I've been playing the sabotage game extremely well, thank you. What do you mean? And he goes, no. He said, what we're doing is we're playing an identity. It's just the script to our identity. There's an identity there that you can't have this, or you can't have it, or don't want it, or it's not good enough for you, or you're not good enough for it. It's an identity, and you're just playing the script of the identity. And I sat with it and I went, oh my God. What I've actually been doing is using sabotage as the word sabotage as a pawn in my game of chess, my game of life, because I've been victim to it. It's sabotage's fault.
Yeah,
And then
that's right.
yeah, and now I dropped in, and this is very news. I've known this for maybe 3-4 weeks or something like that. And when Jason discovers these things and shares them with me, I really embody it before I share it with anybody else. And I've been sitting here going, wow. So I'm going to tell you my little story about a massive sabotage, and it's actually an identity. Are you ready for it? I am changing my whole business model around for 2026. I'm creating a school. So instead of sharing and teaching 5 different products, like, you know, past life regression, spiritual hypnosis, timeline reset, freedom protocol, relationship sovereignty, what I'm doing now is I'm really honoring the future practitioner and putting it over 9 months, which means this. This is the bit, right? Now, what am I sabotaging? Writing the freaking brochure, writing the website for it. That's it. Now, why am I sabotaging it? Because what it means is this. It's 9 months. I get to help so many more people. More people have access to it. It's going to be easier for me, less timing for me, less stress for me, and probably a lot more money. So why am I sabotaging it? Because I have an identity that work has to be hard, right? It's got to be hard, doesn't it? Like, you have to work hard. Well, next year, guess what? I don't get to work hard.
Yeah.
I get to work really easy, and my identity has not caught up with that yet. So what I'm saying is I'm sabotaging it. I'm not. I'm just playing accordingly to the idea that, but it has to be hard. You have to work hard to get what you want. In fact, you really don't, but it's an identity.
Yeah.
And I just want this to drop in for people. Like, this is massive. And just recently I've gone, it's the same with motivation. How many times do we sit there and say, "Oh, I'll do it when I'm more motivated. I'll go to the gym when I'm motivated." Yeah, I'm not very motivated to do that. It's not motivation's fault. It's us. We have an identity that's not a match to our wants or needs yet.
Yeah.
It's massive. Jason, you talk about, because this is your jam. You're amazing at this.
Well, it's a really interesting, because just what you said there, I'll start with that because it's really powerful, because people are constantly talking about discipline. And
Yes.
I know a lot about discipline from a variety of angles. Now, not necessarily because I've been great at it, but there's been times at it when I have been an elite level practitioner of that. And the reason I say that was I was a Shaolin disciple.
Yeah.
Now, a disciple is the root word of discipline is disciple. The
Mm.
word discipline means to live in a disciple-like manner, which is to commit yourself to an ideal bigger than yourself, and then structure your entire life around following that pursuit of that ideal. That's what it is to be a disciple of something. So the idea of discipline, we get it mixed up with the idea of punishment. So, you know, you
Yeah.
discipline children. I said, no, you need to cultivate discipline in children. You said you don't need to punish children. You're talking about punishment.
Yeah.
And so with discipline, there's this big thing is that we have to have discipline, It's not true. None of it's true. You use discipline if you haven't worked out your identity properly. So if you look at somebody who has an addiction, I used to work with a lot of people with addictions, and there was one guy that I talked to this time, and he was going through this whole process about his identity is that he was a failure, nothing worked for him. And it was all terrible. And he's having this big soul story. Anyway, I let him have it. And because technically he'd been arranged to go into rehab to do something about it. And the day that he was supposed to go, he carried on. And anyway, I just said to him, I said, mate, you're not a loser. I said, you are a complete winner. I said, you are like an Olympic athlete. I said, you get up every day at this time without you never ever sleep in. You're always up. You've got a backpack, which is optimized to carry the correct amount of booze back from the bottler. You go up there and you buy the same thing every day because it gives you the maximum amount of effect for the minimum amount of money. You come back, you get smashed, 10 o'clock in the morning, you're hammered. You hit it all day. Said you had a job, you fucked that off because that was getting in the way. You had a family, you did the same thing. You had a wife, you did the same thing. You had friends, you did the same thing. You are absolutely focused like an Olympic athlete on going for gold. So the problem is you don't have a problem that you're a failure. You have a problem of navigation. So you are pointed directly towards your own destruction instead of pointed towards creating a life.
That's gold, by the way. Just everyone needs to take a breath and either rewind that and listen to that because it's huge.
This is the identity discipline thing.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
That if you have an identity that this is who you are, you find motivation. Motivation naturally arises.
Yeah.
There's a couple of aspects of this. So we have the self-sabotage, which is one aspect of it. And that is where we are making a correction in the same way that the stock market makes a correction. Right? So that term, I love that term, is that when everybody loses their mind and just throws money at air, is that it goes through a big boom, everything expands up, and then what happens is reality catches up and the ass drops out of it.
Yeah.
And that's not called a collapse, it's called a correction.
Correct.
Right? So that's what most people think self-sabotage is. So we're going along, okay, we're building and building and building, but our identity isn't big enough to hold it. So what we do is we make a correction. We just change our behaviors so it keeps us in the box that we've already built for ourselves. And anything that's outside of that box needs to be taken away. So we will do something. So people will go out and they'll binge drink, binge eat, go into learned helplessness, go into confusion or fatigue, or what it will create through our subconscious, whatever we need in order to maintain that certainty of self, because the self in itself, our identity, is the most powerful force that we use for manifesting our reality. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect I'm going to touch on, probably we need to do another podcast in more detail, but the other thing is what people call imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Imposter syndrome is exactly the same principle on the other end. So one is I have an identity and I'm not taking action. I'm taking action to keep that stable. The imposter syndrome is where I'm taking action and the results of that action are so undeniable that my identity isn't big enough to hold it. So now I start to feel like I'm an imposter in my own life.
Yeah.
So if you've got imposter syndrome, all you've got to do is sit down and make a bigger identity. That's all you have to do.
That's it.
And we say this at retreats and people freak out when I say it. So you probably, if you freak out now, that's okay. Then how do you know the truth? How do you know the truth about anything? Well, you make it up. And when I say that, people just go like, what? And it's like, what makes you think everything else that you think is true isn't made up in your own head?
Exactly.
That when you actively choose it, at least you're in alignment with it. So if you let other people choose it for you and give it to you, said you're believing anything. And we live our life based on our identity. We base everything on our reality. Our decisions are based on what feels right to us, what seems right to us, what's logical to us. And all of those parameters are made up, which is a terrifying thought.
It's a terrifying thought, isn't it? This whole concept, see, identity is everything. So identity is, what do you identify as? You will find out your identity by your tangible results
Cool. Every time.
every
Not
time,
your
right?
feelings.
Yeah.
Not your
No,
feelings.
no, no, not feelings, not thoughts or anything like that. It is, look at your tangible results. Look at your bank account. Look at your friends around you. Look at your health. Look at your wealth. Look at what you know, what you don't. Like, look at your life. If you are in chronic pain, you have an identity that you probably cannot be healthy.
Mm.
You know, if you're broke, you probably have an identity that that's all you deserve.
Yep.
You will seek your tangible results. It won't ever be what you think it is. That's
Yeah.
always look at that. And
And
then
it'll be simple.
yeah, exactly. So if you look at your bank account and go, oh, I've got money, sometimes I've got lots, sometimes I've got nothing, that's an identity.
Mm. And I think the thing that's important about this, because I suppose the next arising question is that if you look at the tangible results and you say all of these awful things happen to me, or I've got this awful illness, or I've got, my marriage has collapsed, or I have a terrible relationship with my children, or whatever. And you say, so what you're saying is that the person I believe I am has created that. No, your subconscious has created
That's
that
right.
out of the identity that you're doing.
Yeah.
That it is not an issue of now adding to your identity that you're a failure and you've destroyed your own life.
Yeah.
That this is not what this is about. So that it's actually taking responsibility for that identity gives you power. It puts you in the ability to change it.
Yeah. It is so important that this is a really big thing. I'm writing a book on this at the moment, and it's about when we find out our identities and when we find out that, oh shit, I need to take responsibility for my part in places. We're only responsible for how we think, speak, feel, and do, right? We're not responsible for the world. We are responsible for our place in the world. And here's the thing. I'll tell you a story. 3 years ago, I went on a retreat and I found out all of us girls, there was a common thing of the women on my mother's side were all given away very early. And what I mean by given away is this. I was 10 months old and had to go live with my grandparents. My mother was 4 when she went to boarding school. My grandmother was 6 when she went to boarding school. My great-grandmother was 6 when she went to boarding school. And none of the boys went. The boys always stayed home. And we've got this thing about why were the girls always sent away? And 3, so it's a real abandonment wound. I've got to tell you, it's a massive abandonment wound, as you can imagine, right? Well, 3 years ago, I found out why we were given away. We weren't given away. We were protected. So my father left when I was 10 months old and left my mother with the heavies, knocking on the door because he was a shocking gambler and she had to pay the bill. So she had to go to work. And first off, she had me in like a childcare place. And at 10 months old, they wouldn't accept a child in a nappy. You had to be toilet trained. I was 10 months old. Needless to say, I wasn't toilet trained. And she would send off 6 things of clothing for me every day. And she'd pick me up in the car, and I was there for a couple of weeks, I think. And she would pick me up in the car and I would drain 2 bottles of water. I was very dehydrated. She'd have to wake me in the morning. She goes, "This is not working for my daughter." And she said, she had to drop me off with my grandparents, which is great, but it was at 10 months old. So did she do it to abandon me? No, she did it to protect me, right? Then I found out my mother, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother were all molested very, 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 very young. And they told their mothers, so my great-grandmother and my mother were molested by priests. That was in the 20s and 1890 or whatever it was. No one believed them. So their mothers went, "I can't stop the priest, so I have to pull you away from the priest." So they sent them to Catholic convents. They weren't abandoned. They weren't dropped off. They were protected. Same with my mother. My mother was molested. No one believed my grandmother. She said, "I'm going to have to send you. I have to pull you away from the predator."
Yep.
So this is a generational thing where we all thought we were given away. And only 3 years ago, I went, actually, we weren't given away. We were protected.
Yep.
Which makes me go in a leeway of this. And this is what I want, Jason wants to talk about as well. Your past can be flexible. It's just how you decide what it is.
Yeah. So one of the things about this that is challenging and understandably challenging is that people look at it and say, "Well, this happened to me." And it's like, yes, we can't go back and change those events. Now, there's a particular metaphysical technique that people use for that, and I'll talk about it in a minute. But you can't change those events. And the reason that you can't change those events is because it has formed who you are now. All of those things have happened to get you to a certain point. Now, we may not understand it, but the reality of it is, good and bad, they have formed us into who we are. And it is, in the bigger picture, a very important part of who we become. So whilst we cannot change the physical realities of what happened to us, what we can change is our perspective, because we have remembered things from a perspective of who we were, our identity at the time when that happened to us. There's the latest brain research about memory is fascinating and terrifying in that it talks about our memory, and it says that we don't remember. So say, for example, I have an incident, not an incident, but I have an experience from 5 years of age. So when I think back now and I go, "Oh, here it is," and I see it in my head, or however I experience it, and I go, "Yep, I've got that memory. No worries." Now think of something when you're 15. Okay, I've got that memory. Good. Now go back to 5 years and remember it again. Yep, awesome. Now, the reality of what happened just then was not that I went back to the memory from when I was 5 years old. I went back to the memory of the last time I remembered it. Now, I could have remembered that last week, so it's actually just last week. And because we did it one, then another, and another, we only went back about 6 seconds. And that's as far back as it goes, because it's a little bit like saving a Word document. Every time you remember something, you save it at that point. So if you have changes in perception or changes in awareness or identity, you are very subtly changing that memory to interpret it, so that you're going, "Okay, this makes sense to me, but it makes sense to me now." Now, that is incredible and a little bit terrifying, because what that says is, and this is where the power is that at any point in time we had an experience and we wrote that in, we saved that document to say this is what its meaning was. But there was a whole heap of other things that we weren't aware of. There was a whole heap of things. There's things about a situation, as you were saying before, about the protection versus abandonment. As a child, you saw it as abandonment. As
Yeah.
an adult with different information, you went, wait a minute, that's not what that was. And you rewrote the memory.
And
in
can I
doing
just
so.
put in my whole point to it was this, and I forgot to share it, was this. When we're going in and we're flipping our story or looking at our past or going, okay, so maybe I wasn't sabotaging, maybe it was just an identity. Now I feel bad about it. Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that at all.
We can't shame ourselves from our past, because what'll happen is that's just still part of the same identity.
Yeah, it's just a reinforcement
It's a
of
reinforcement.
the
We
lower
don't,
aspects.
yeah, we can't. What I really suggest is this: see something, go, glad I picked that little one up.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad I see you now. Thank you. Really celebrate yourself that you picked it up and you go, and just feel how different that is in the body. It's really, really enlightening, and it'll get all the cogs in the mind working, and then you'll find better solutions as well.
Yeah. And that's the key point of it, because it's not what happened to the past that is a problem for us.
No.
So it's the fact that on some level we are recreating it in the present.
Yeah.
And we might be recreating, like you might have had an issue where you were very, it might have been, I was heavily bullied when I was younger, right? So I look at that and I go, well, up until 2 weeks ago, I thought I was heavily bullied when I was younger. Said I wasn't heavily
Yeah.
bullied. I was actually creating circumstances that allowed that to happen. I realized very clearly how I had set that up, because some people are just magnets for it. And you go, why am I a magnet for it? Well, that's a thing to investigate. And it's not to investigate and shame and blame yourself for it. You always did the best that you could do based on the information that you had at the time, and particularly in your subconscious.
Yeah.
So we look at this and we go, well, how come I didn't understand this? How come I made these choices? I said, because 5%, let's just say, like, these details are always changing, like the percentages are always changing, but for the point of the exercise, let's just say, right, 5% of your mind is conscious and 95% is subconscious. So when you make a decision about, I'm a good person, then what happens in your subconscious is, yeah, but you're not worthy and you're not allowed to have nice things and people don't like you and you're a victim and you're this and you're that.
Yeah.
And you don't know. It's unconscious to you. You don't know that all this stuff is there.
Yeah.
But that's what moves into the cells. The consciousness plus the subconscious creates the command that moves into the cells of the body, that is then expressed vibrationally out into the world. And that is then mirrored back from your reality as your experience. So you can look at it and you can say, well, there's an example there to draw a reference to it, where it's a bit of an extreme case where you go, but wait a minute, you have an intergenerational issue where there's this abuse, so we can't blame the child's identity for that. And it's like, no, we can't blame the child's identity. But in the subconscious is reading what's in the DNA. And if there is an ancestral trauma that's not resolved,
Yeah.
it is being played out in the subconscious.
Yeah.
And it's not the child's fault. We can't blame the child for that, because they're not responsible for that. But they are creating things within themselves that are manifesting in their reality.
Yeah.
Now, the meaning of that, what they can do with it, how they can resolve it, who they become through that process. So that's where the power is. That's why that stuff is there on a soul level. It's not to define us or restrict us. It's to actually liberate us. So every problem that we get handed is for us to solve, because we're also given a solution.
Yes.
And if we don't do that, what happens is we just keep unconsciously recreating a version of that again and again and again. How many times have we said the same thing? Why does this always happen to me? Why do I always have the same, why do I always have the same situation? Why do I always end up in the same relationship? Why do I always get the same job? Because you're creating the same reality. There's a lot of ways of looking at it. I think the most important part of it is, I'll give you a good example. There's the Harry Potter stories are a great example in popular culture, because J.K. Rowling brilliantly wrote those books from the perspective of the child at the age that they were. So if you read the first book, The Philosopher's Stone, if you read that book, everything's pretty straightforward. There's goodies, there's baddies, it's black, it's white, it's everything. And there's a twist at the end because it's like, guess what? Kids don't understand the world, right? Right?
Yeah.
But by the time you get to the point where they're about 18 years of age and you look back at the story, you go, oh, the guys I thought were the goodies were not necessarily the goodies. The baddies were not necessarily the baddies. There were so many factors going on around here that I was not aware of. And that journey that she takes people, the readers on, that is how we live. That's the genius of those stories, is that be able to create those direct experiences where you grow in maturity in that world the same way that the characters do. It's genius. But
Absolutely.
but we do that to ourselves. We look back at a memory and go, well, this is what happened to me when I was 10. Did it? Yes, there was a physical outcome, but was it what you think it was? Not to blame it, but to recognize that you are making decisions in your life today based around ideas of what is real in your past. And that past is not necessarily real. So we are a prime position to do something about this because we can change it today. Now, there's a lot of different ways to do it. I wanted to talk a bit about this technique called revision. And because I've been playing with this again. And what was really funny about it was I had completely forgotten that I had played with this years ago. And I'd come back into it and I was looking at this technique going, yeah, okay, I've heard of it, but I'd sort of forgotten. Anyway, I pulled out a book that Neville Goddard, so it's a metaphysical teacher called Neville Goddard. And Neville Goddard is probably the most famous teacher on the law of assumption. So the law of assumption works on the premise that the universe, when manifesting, it does not understand the difference between something that has been a physical reality and something that is an imagined reality. To it, whatever goes out is manifested back. And one of the techniques he used for this was the technique of revision. And what it is, basically go back to a point where, say, for example, you had an argument with your spouse and you go, I really hated how that ended.
Yeah.
Well, if I leave that mulling around in my subconscious, what happens is I start manifesting from the frequency of it. I start attaching it to other traumatic events in the past. I start creating the identity around why this is normal. So what the revision technique is that you go back and you go, no, that never happened. What was the outcome I wanted? And then you hold that picture of the outcome that you wanted and you basically rewrite your memory as that this is what it is. Now, does this change manifestation? Yes, because you are manifesting from a point of reference. Your identity is that good things have come out of this communication, not guilt and shame every time they see their face, right? So it breaks up all the anchors that we create. Now, what's interesting about this technique is that people have used it to get rid of injuries, get rid of past traumas. They just revise it out and say that never happened and basically brainwash themselves with it.
Yep.
Now, I did this years ago, and it was funny because only the other day, because I pulled out my Neville Goddard books, and I went, I'm just going to look up this revision technique. And I opened up the book, and I had all these pencil notes scratched through the entire book. And I'm just like, oh, wait a minute, I've got some, shit, I've read all this.
Oh, wow.
I completely forgot that I'd read all
Yeah.
of it. And I was like, okay, and I had all my notes over it. So when I was looking, I was going, oh, I remembered what happened when I used it. So many years ago, when I came across this technique, I go, I'm going to try this out. So I had a hip injury that I had for decades. And I was laying on the bed, put myself into that meditative state. I went, okay, I'm going to revise the hip injury. So I went back to the memory of the event and I changed it. And instead of moving the way I moved, which injured my hip, what I did was I went to do that and I changed my mind. And then I just moved differently and had this completely safe experience. Nothing happened. It went on and everything else followed on naturally. Now, I had a really weird experience. When I did that and that had anchored in, if you've ever had Bowen therapy, there's this thing that happens where they kind of roll a ligament and you just feel all the tension unravel out through the
Wow.
ligaments. I was laying there. When it anchored, I felt that my whole hip went clank, and I could feel
Whoa.
everything unravel. And I got up off the bed a few minutes later, and I was like, my hip feels great. It's like it never happened. It's like,
That's
whoa,
amazing.
it's amazing. Yeah. But this is technically a technique that we would call magic. And we don't do magic. Rule number one, don't do magic, right? And the reason you don't do magic is this, because it creates externalities. And I got up off that bed and I was round. It's great. And then over the next few weeks, I started having problems with my back, my knees, my ankles, my neck, my shoulders, because my body had adjusted to having that hip injury for like 30 years.
Wow.
The rest of the body was the same. The hip was now in a different place and completely fine. So the rest of my body was falling to bits because it was all out of alignment with the brand new hip.
Yeah.
So I had to go in there and then correct it. So the way I corrected it was that I worked through grace. I allowed the divine to recorrect it all in the way that was in the highest and best for what it should have been. And yes, those things corrected and they started to
Yeah.
change. Everything started to heal up and I was fine. But there has been an ongoing effect to that. So it's been interesting that we can have that effect because it happens in real time. I wanted to mention it because whilst we want to make those changes to where we've been, if we don't take it from the big picture, we're going to create those externalities.
Yeah.
So we can use things like, if you've ever seen people, like neuro-linguistic programming has got a mixed reputation
Yes.
for a reason, right?
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
And it's well earned, right? There's some
Yes.
really shonky shit that people do with it, and there's some really good stuff that people do
Yes.
with it. And one of the things that happens when you see people that abuse that technique, they look like someone's had way too much plastic surgery. So they're a collection of these revised aspects of self. So don't like this about yourself, scrub it, get a new one. Cool. But now you've got these perfect eyebrows that don't match the rest of your face. So you get your lips done, and now the lips are good and the eyebrows are good, but the other things don't quite fit, and you'll get it done again and again. And it's the problem with any of those techniques. If we don't bring it back into through the soul and the connection with the divine, we don't get the whole picture. When the whole picture corrects, everything's fine. And we just, because it all balances, because we don't know why it's important that we have that. Often those experiences that we have and those traumas that we're holding, we need to work through them in an intelligent way, because there's a reason that the soul allowed that to be created in the first place. And if we start chopping and changing and messing with it, we now create outside of consciousness. And there's a formal term for creating outside of consciousness. It's called karma, right?
Yep.
And then that means that because you're not consciously able to observe what you're creating, you then have to throw a boomerang out into the manifesting universe and let it come back and hit you later on from an angle you weren't expecting, so that you can go through the process. If we can work through grace, it allows us to upgrade in real time without all this chop change, throwing the boomerangs left, right, and center. And at the fundamental of it, to bring this, it's gone out in a bit of a woo-woo, to bring it back in for everyone, that all of those things that we have in our past, if we were to take the idea that everything that happened to me had a whole heap of things that I was not aware of, and whilst there might have been 3 or 4 things that were awful about this situation, there was also probably a dozen things that were not. And I'm not looking at it right now. Not that I wasn't looking at it then. Right now, I'm not looking at it. So I could change my perception of it moving forward. And in doing that, I would put down all of my attachment to those negative problems. So we spent a lifetime. I mean, I was at your training a couple of weeks ago. I had a remembering of a memory that was before I was born. It was the soul making a decision. Now, having that memory meant that you could take every major event in my life and put this thing in brackets. And that was, this happened to me when I was, I was born 8 weeks premature, in brackets, because of this decision.
Yeah.
And then this happened because of this decision. And then this happened because of this decision. And you could go through your entire life. Why we need to be able to look at it and be able to make decisions about our identity now is that we are deliberately choosing what's in the brackets, the subconscious interpretation that is our identity. And we get to choose that now, which means even though I might have spent 40 years manifesting reality in a certain way, I could change that today. I could change that in real time. And what moves forward from this point changes. Anybody who takes responsibility for being the end of a line for something, an ancestral trauma, everybody, like I don't drink. I come from a long line of alcoholics.
Yeah.
And I deliberately don't drink. And because I chose that was going to end with me. So I was not going to inform that into my children to take it forward. I don't want to give all those frames of reference that this is normal.
Yeah.
That is not normal.
Yeah.
So it's that responsibility, but we can do that all over our identity because most of our identity is made up by what we haven't understood. So if we can take that time to understand it now, manifesting forward from this point, so this is where the real power is, and the power of creation. And it is the creation that heals the soul.
Yeah.
That's the purpose.
What a great podcast, Jason Parks. It's been amazing. What a ride we've been on. Is there anything else that you want to share with these amazing people before we sign off on this one?
No, I think that's good. We'll see if people have got any questions about, because I think this will probably provoke some questions.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Please get in touch with us. Facebook, Insta, all of those things. soulalignedresults.com is our website.
Yep.
And you can always find me and Jason. What's your email, Jason?
thelifeprinciple@gmail.com. That's my direct one. So
Right. My direct one is emma@emmaromano.com.au. Is email us. We would love to hear from you. We would love to hear how you've been going with these podcasts, what you enjoy, what needs tweaking for you, what you would like us to share online. We'll give you a big shout out if you want to. Guys, thanks so much for listening to this. This is a big one. You might need to listen to it a few times. Thank you, Jason. Thanks for doing 50 podcasts with me. You're a legend.
Thanks, Emma. And thank you, everybody, for sticking with us.
Thanks. Bye.